On today's Locked On Senators, it's officially the beginning of our 2024 draft coverage. And with that, we've got our profiles numbers 80 through 78.
And we got to hear the opinion of some Sens players playing in the World Championship on what they think of the new head coach.
We'll get into all that, plus the Belleville Sens season is dead. That's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 1044 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. You can follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Monday, May 13th, and Pilsy, if Brady Tkachuk says the Sens got the best coach on the market, well, I guess I gotta believe him.
Yeah, I mean, that's great news. We thought there was other better candidates possibly, but Brady Tkachuk says Travis Green is the guy. I mean, you got to feel a little bit sorry for the Leafs who made their decision to fire Sheldon Keefe after the best coach was taken off the market. Kind of a bonehead move there by management, but that's fine. So Travis Green looking good so far.
And our friend Claire Hanna is over in Czechia covering the World Championships for TSN, doing a great job. This article is courtesy of NHL.com and Aaron Vickers. And Brady Tkachuk's exact quote on the hiring of Travis Green saying, "It's amazing news back home. We have our coach now for a bunch of years and a great coach too. Probably the best coach on the market. We're looking forward to it and looking forward to get to know him over the summer." Does that to you imply that Brady might be spending a bit more time in Ottawa over the summer?
Yeah, I think so, Ross. And I think I'm forgetting the exact details of it, but I'm pretty sure Brady Tkachuk kind of made a public service announcement to the rest of his team being like, all right, guys, like, let's all stay in Ottawa. Let's train really hard this offseason and let's, come together as a group. Whereas I think in past years, a lot of guys are going home. They got summer homes in other areas. The Europeans are going back overseas, which nothing wrong with that. But I think Brady is just trying to really say, all right, guys, it's been 6 years of accomplishing nothing. We have to try something different. Let's try mixing it up in the offseason. So you got to hope that a lot of these guys are staying in Ottawa. And hey, Ottawa is a beautiful place to be in the summer. It's not like you're roughing it there in Ottawa. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think so too. And also a lot of kind of rumor mill talk and behind, it's all behind the laptops where people are getting all like, oh, Brady wants to get out of Ottawa, like get him out of here. I think this, not even just his quote, but just kind of his overall sense. You heard him in the post season press conference where like, he wants to win in Ottawa. I truly believe that to be the case. I would be shocked if it's otherwise. Even where he says, like, we have our coach for a bunch of years. It's like he's in the implication, and I love that. I mean, he's the captain of the team. He should be, but he's in it with this team, and I look forward to seeing what these guys can do together. No reference to the fact that his old man was a former teammate of Travis Green's. We'll have to catch up with Big Walt over the summer. I think he's a little busy watching his oldest boy do his thing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Further quotes in this article. Shout out to Aaron Vickers for getting it. "I think our management knows what they're doing," says Shane Pinto, and hopefully it's a good hire for us. We're happy to have him. The quote we get from Jake Sanderson as well, who's playing with Team USA, was more so about Jacques Martin, saying that he did a great job for the Ottawa Senators. Love this one here. He's an older guy and has a lot of wisdom. So there you have it. And lastly, from Brady Tkachuk again, it's accountability. And you could tell Thomas Chabot said as much in the press conference to start to end the season. Brady Tkachuk going again. It's like the accountability comes from a guy who's lived it, a guy who's put in those hard work hours and knows what he's talking about. That's something that's going to be great for our group. It's something that we need. And I think everybody's looking forward to training camp next season. Amen to that. I'm looking forward to training camp as well. These guys got to come out of the gate flying. I cannot handle another November from hell where the team just slides out of any hope for playoffs, because it's too much fun watching the playoffs right now. Like, think of our buddies over at Locked On Canucks. Last year, they were in this boat. Disappointing. Awful. What the heck's going on? They booed Rick Tocchet in his first game as head coach. Now, a lot of that was they just loved Bruce Boudreau so much in Vancouver, thought he got the short end of the stick. But look at him now. Jack Adams Award winner, all but guaranteed. And the way that they're playing and pushing and being a pain in the ass of the Edmonton Oilers, I mean, that tells you a pretty big chunk of the story is that it's the guys who they brought in since the change. The Zadorovs, the Carson Soucy, the cross-check in the face, probably not a part of that, but still, these mutants they have on the back end that are just doing their thing, it's making a world of difference. So next step for the Senators, and we'll be mixing this in with all of our draft coverage throughout the next month or two because it all comes so quick in June and July. Draft is on the Friday. That Monday is Canada Day, free agency. We know all the roster reconstruction happens around then. So over the course of the next couple of months, Pillsy and I will explain it in segment 2. We've got all of our draft profiles, but we'll also always have another segment either discussing what the Sens need to do on the back end specifically or other big topics to start the show. So it's not just draft coverage, but it's certainly going to be a big part of the next 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah, we're stoked that we get to do our prospect profiles. More profiles than ever. But Ross, before
year 5.
Yeah, we've done a couple of them in the past. But before we move on, a couple things I want to talk about. You talk about Rick Tocchet and the Vancouver Canucks. Well, often you look at coaches and goaltenders hand in hand. They're doing this with a third string rookie goaltender. So, like, obviously, and you got to give credit to Shieloffs, definitely, but you got to give credit to the coaching staff being able to overcome that adversity in the playoffs. So, shout out Rick Tocchet. And then when you're looking at Brady Tkachuk, I think it's a blessing that new ownership, new management, new coaching is coming in, because I feel like that resets the clock a little bit for Brady, right? Like if it was just the same thing, Pierre Dorion, DJ Smith again, and there's not much change, maybe he starts losing interest. But now at least he's like, all right, I got to give this new regime a shot here. And I got to do it wholeheartedly. I'm going to go to World Championships, captain USA, hopefully to a medal, have a big offseason, galvanize this group in the offseason, come back, have a good training camp under a hard, demanding head coach, and then hopefully change things around. So I really think that Brady Tkachuk is going to be interested in resetting the clock here and giving this new regime a chance.
I cannot wait. Now, the season is officially over for the entire Senators organization. Belleville losing a really tough 3-1 game, empty net goal. It was Friday evening, so obviously it's a little bit aged by now, Monday. But what's your takeaway as a whole from this Belleville Sens season as I open something I got in the mail from you just in time for Belleville Sens playoffs?
Uh-oh, Ross, I feel bad. I did very confidently proclaim to you that I'm not worried about mailing you that jersey because the Belleville Senators are going to have a long playoff run. That's poetic justice there. As you get the jersey for playoffs, their playoffs end. I don't know what to point to, Ross, because usually when you get bounced from the playoffs, it's, and if you're watching on YouTube, Ross unveiling the number 9 red Crookshank jersey. Very beautiful. Usually there's one main thing you can point to. I don't know if I have a main thing, Ross, and maybe you can pick one out, but I thought Belleville played a pretty good game all throughout the playoffs. Maybe you want some of their top guys, like I mentioned, to step up. Like Igor, I think only had 3 or 4 points in the playoffs. Crooker only had a handful. Clevin, I thought his game kind of declined as the playoffs went on, unfortunately. And then Matt Sogard had a couple goals that he wishes he had back. So I guess, Ross, to wrap it up, the top guys needed to elevate their game rather than kind of have it plateau.
The problem is the deeper you get, and obviously you're playing a division champion in the Cleveland Monsters, like that Jack Greaves kid was unbelievable, especially the double overtime game. Belleville had a ton of pressure. They had a 2-minute power play. And even in game 4, they had a
minute 10 2-man advantage. Yeah,
exactly. Like that's where you have to produce. I think I said I need the power play to be better in that game, and they simply weren't. It was 2-1 late. They had the goalie pulled. They didn't really get any grade A's with the goalie pulls. A couple shots from the point. They were looking for tips, but Jack Greaves stood tall. So you got to give some stick taps. That Monsters team, I was probably expecting a little bit more offensively from them. I thought Belleville did a good job in terms of the 5-on-5 play and keeping things tilted towards that end of the ice. They definitely outshot them in the series, but just couldn't come through. Bright spot, obviously, Stephen Halliday. The way he played, finished at the time of their elimination, he finished second in AHL scoring in the playoffs, first among rookies, first among assists, I bet, as well. Like it's a huge rise to prominence for him. Now, there's some people who are penciling him into the opening night lineup in the NHL next year. I'd tell you guys to reel it in. I think that the depth is exactly what this prospect pool needs, and having him be the top line or second line center in Belleville next year is best for everybody. Let him get to the pace of the pro game because the hockey sense is elite. He's a disher. He can shoot the pill too. That goal in game 4, he just ripped it past Jack Greaves.
And casually ripped it. Like he's just snipe.
And he went from full celly on his first playoff goal to none on the second one. He's like, dude, I've been doing this for years. Come on.
We should come to expect that, Ross. Every time we talk to Stephen Halliday, he gets on. He's like, hey, guys, what's up? Whatever. Very nonchalant. And then halfway through the interview, he's cracking jokes and he's fully into it. So you never know what you're going to get with Halliday.
That's awesome. So big bright spot there. Also, Matt Sogard suffered I don't even know if it was an injury or illness, but he was not 100%. That's what the Belleville Sens were saying. So Levi Merolainen got to play in game 4. No surprise, a lead on breakaways. I think he made 3 breakaway saves. He played really well. That was also an encouraging sign going into next season. I think he played 24 games or so this year. I'd like to see that around 30 to 35 next year.
And especially, Ross, you really got to tip your cap to Levi Merolainen. He did that in an elimination game on the road when he's been cold for weeks. So that's a big pressure situation they put him in, and I thought he did a really good job.
All right, that's the Belleville Sens eulogy. Their season is over, but never better. They finally made playoffs. They won a game. They won a round, and they won a home game in round 2.
I got to see it.
That's awesome. And you got that elite photo where you're selling Stephen Halliday's first pro goal. Yep. Awesome all around. You know what else is great? Our draft coverage. Up next, we'll explain to you what we're planning over the course of the next 6 weeks, and then we'll get right in to our draft rankings. And there's a familiar name that you're going to recognize. That's all coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Policy Genius. Guys, Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you money so that you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options even offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius will help you compare all your options from all the companies in the country, and they've got licensed experts on hand that are going to make it easy for you to make your choice. You can easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks, so you can find the option that works best for you. Look, guys, your work life and insurance policy may not be enough protection for your family's needs. So make sure you're covered, and even worse, you may not have that protection when you leave your job. Policy Genius gives you the unbiased opinion from a team of licensed experts, And they don't have any incentive to recommend one company or another. They're going to find what's best for you no matter what. And they've got thousands of 5-star reviews on Google to back it up. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedon or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends at Shawarma Palace. It's the only place to go whenever you're hungry in the nation's capital. Shawarma Palace started with one location, just a small store on Rideau Street back in 1997. And now it's a conglomerate. There are stores everywhere. And why? Because it's delicious, it's affordable, and the always greet you with a laugh and a smile. The guys who are serving the shawarma are just such beauties there. You go in, they're cracking jokes. Oh, you only want the sandwich? What about the platter? The platters were my choice. You get the extra garlic on there. You get the roasted potatoes. You get the fresh salad. All of the fixins that you have come to know and love at Shawarma Palace. You can top it with falafel, with chicken, or with the halal beef. It's all available to you at Shawarma Palace. Any of their 7 locations also available on Uber Eats. So you don't even have to leave your home. You can get Shawarma Palace delivered right to your door. Pilsy's a big sandwich guy. You can grab it and go. I like sitting down and enjoying myself a platter. But whatever I do, I know that when I eat at Shawarma Palace, I eat like a royal, and we want you guys to. So go head to Shawarma Palace. Let them know Locked On Senators sent you. Send us a picture on social media. We love to see it. We love Shawarma Palace, and I want to see the entire city get behind these local beauties who love the Sens just as much as you and I. So go head to Shawarma Palace on Bank and Rideau or in the Saint Laurent Shopping Center. They're also available on Rideau Street by Augusta and in Orleans. You're never too far away from a Shawarma Palace, so go eat like a royal today. Go eat at Shawarma Palace. All right, Pilsy, it is year 5 of our Prospect NHL Draft Profiles, which means it's almost been 5 years since Tim Stützle was drafted 3rd overall by the Ottawa Senators. Doesn't it just feel like yesterday that webcam was in Germany and we're like, wait, that's a gathering of more than 10 people. Are they going to be okay? And sure enough, Tim Stützle gets drafted, throws on the number 88 jersey with the S-T-U-E spelling of his last name. Didn't wear that lettering, didn't wear that number, but man, the crest still looks good on him 5 years later.
Oh, yeah. And anytime you can have Alex Trebek intro player to your franchise, it's a beautiful moment.
It certainly was. It's one where I think Sens fans can watch that on YouTube for years to come. And obviously, it was tragic that Alex Trebek passed away soon after that. That was almost like his last public appearance, getting to make a top pick for his hometown club. So a very special moment there and a special draft for the Ottawa Senators, getting Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson, Ridley Gregg, Roby Yarventi, Tyler Klevin, Igor Sokolov, Levi Marilainen. Really remarkable. Now, the few drafts since, there's been a few diamonds in the rough. Stephen Halliday, one of them in 2022, a 4th-round pick. But as a whole, there's a lot of like, that guy's got a chance to make it this draft year. They need to find a guy who would be at least considered a very good bet to make an impact at the NHL level. The Senators will have the tools to do that with the 7th overall pick, with likely the 25th or 26th overall pick. We could find that out as soon as tomorrow. If Boston loses, then it will not be 29th or lower. So that could be a nice silver lining. And then they've got an early 2nd-round pick. So that's 3 picks in the top 40 this year, Pilsy, that they need to make a distinct impact with.
Yeah, absolutely. This team's prospect cupboard is very bare, as we heard our good friend Scott Wheeler from The Athletic rank the Ottawa Senators prospect pipeline 31st out of 32 teams. So let's replenish those cupboards.
So what do we look at with our draft coverage for those who are just either getting into LOSP or haven't checked out our draft coverage before.
Yeah, so with our prospect profiles, we make sure we're covering the top 80 guys that we believe, based on the scouts and resources we use, that we believe are the top 80. We've got, what, Ross, 7 different entities we're using this year?
We've got 7 entities. We've got Bob McKenzie from TSN, who really is just parroting what scouts say. So this is the most NHL accurate one. Craig Button is on a projection of what he thinks these guys will be at the NHL level. So I think the juxtaposition between those two are always very good. Then we've got both guys from The Athletic, Scott Wheeler, you mentioned, and Corey Pronman. From Flow Hockey, formerly of ESPN, Chris Peters is a great resource. HockeyProspect.com. We've become good buddies with Jerome Berube. He's going to help us with the mock draft, we believe, that we always do right before the draft. Full first-round mock draft comes out right before the NHL draft. It'll probably be the Monday of the week of the draft. Get all fired up for that. And then, of course, Elite Prospects. Elite Prospects has already put out a top 96. So we have different thumbnails or different graphics for each player, and we have when the ranking is finalized. Once we do that profile, that's their ranking, even once they get updated, but we will always update the ones to come. And I'm not saying we're better scouts than Bob McKenzie, but I will say that last year, Bob McKenzie had 28 of his 32 top-ranked players go in the first round. We had 29. We had one extra in the first round. We might have been the most accurate top 32 compared to what we saw at the NHL draft. So year 5, Pilsy, something about 10,000 hours. I think we're getting close here when it comes to NHL draft coverage. We don't pretend to be scouts, but we're pretty good at condensing everything we can find on the internet and communicating that to you well. So we will be doing these throughout the next 6.5 weeks, or 6 weeks, where we will be counting down 3 at a time. 3 every single day, 3 draft profiles. And then on the weekend, just like I did with the player exit interviews that we did for the Senators, we will be posting the individual draft profiles. So night of the draft, if your buddy's team drafts player X, hey, tell them to go watch Locked On Senators player profile. It's unbiased because it's before the draft. And I think it's a good way to kind of, for the lesser named players, top 30, you can find a lot of content on them. We're doing some digging to get you some of this information from the guys in the Swiss League and in the second tier in Sweden. But man, a year from now, these could be household names if they have a great World Juniors in Ottawa. Another great reason to be in the know for the players who are coming up right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Ross and I, we've decided which entities we're going to use, which ones we trust. It's a lot of them we've had on the show. So we know these scouts, these people, and we take as much information as we can and try to give it to you in a nice, clear, concise, conversational way, and put a little Sens spin on the end. Tell you, hey, is this guy a good fit for the Sens? Do we think this is someone the Sens should target based on where they're picking and things like that? So we hope you enjoy our prospect profiles because we love doing them, Ross. Honestly, this is one of my favorite times of the podcast calendar for us because we've got our list and we know what we're doing every day, and we're learning about these prospects that a lot of them I haven't even heard of yet. So it's great to dive in and learn some more about them because you can find some diamonds in the rough, especially I think this draft is going to be very, very interesting. So I'm fired up to get this going, Ross.
And not only that, we've just booked our tickets to Vegas. We will be boots on the ground at this draft. And yeah, here, just so the people can see, we're not messing around here. This is our schedule over the course of the next 6 weeks. It's ranking season, baby. Draft rankings. And we will get to you a little bit of Sens talk in each and every episode. But let's get to our rankings next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. They got it. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. It's that simple. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need, but at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into that MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Visit ebaymotors.com. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Check it out today, guys. eBay Motors.
All right, Pillsy, a reminder for all you draft nerds like us out there that you can go check out our mock draft from last week. We did the top 8, and Pillsy, I heard the feedback and I kind of agree. There's no way a 6'7" defenseman falls to number 8. I think that we're going to see Anton Silyev go a little bit higher, which is going to further throw a wrench in things. Really, after number 3, to me, this draft is as wide open as it could be.
Yeah, Ross, I feel like it was 50-50. People saying that they liked your approach to the Sens pick, which was Tija Ginla, and people saying they like my swing on Zane Parekh. But we did have a lot of people mention Selyev's there, and that's a guy I really seriously considered putting there instead. So it's not a bad choice at all.
And a couple other really good comments. This one comes from Matt Grant, who's a great listener of the show. Really appreciate the citizens out there who are, engaging with us every day online, leaving comments, all that. Mentioning, how Steve Stais, he's all about stability, all about, you guessed it, stability. There's a lot of risk with the Zane Parekh pick, and I'm starting to warm up to the idea that maybe they go a bit safer there. But we also got a comment saying that the streets are saying that the Senators are diving very deep into Zane Parekh, seeing if they can work with the defensive deficiencies, because offensively, best defenseman in the draft, you could argue. This guy is a complete star when the puck is on his stick. But we are weeks away from his draft profile. We got to work our way right up to it. All right, beginning our NHL 2024 draft rankings with number 80, a name you may be familiar with, Miroslav Satan Jr. Yes, his old man played 1,000 games in the league. Yes, he won the Stanley Cup with the 2009 Pittsburgh Penguins. Yes, he was a beast offensively. His son, 6'7", enormous frame, still a lot to grow into, only 190 pounds. And this kid, he's starting to get some traction in Slovakia, and the name, I think, is going to get him off the board a little bit earlier than he may otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, Ross, when you can get a 6'7" centerman in your prospect pipeline, that's definitely a good thing. We know better than anyone, actually, that the Ottawa Senators love drafting guys that have dads, uncles, grandparents, anyone with family history in the NHL they love looking at. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the two Miroslav Satans, their junior and senior. I was a big Miroslav Satan fan growing up, Ross. As you guys know, I was a Dominic Hasek fan first and then a hockey fan. So I followed the Buffalo Sabres team very closely, and this guy was lighting it up back then. So if his son can carve out a career even close to his dad, things are looking pretty good.
Well, his dad was a 111th overall pick, so I wanted to ask you, do you think that Satan Jr. goes in the top 111? He's only ranked by NHL Central Scouting. I just wanted to get him in at number 80 because, like you, I was a big fan of the dad growing up. I was a big fan of Slovak hockey players. Yeah. My good buddy Libor was living across the street, the ambassador's son to Slovakia. So it helped Ottawa, had Marian Hossa, it helped Ed Zdeno Chara back then, two legends in Slovak hockey. But Satan, post-career, the elder, he is the president of the Slovak Hockey Federation. So he is still very involved in the game. with Slovan Bratislava, the J20 Slovak League team. Miroslav Satan Jr. with 30 points in 26 games, a plus 14 rating, 20 penalty minutes as well. You think this kid's going to go in the top 4 rounds? I think that's probably around the range where I would have him.
Yeah, well, Ross, as we mentioned, we have 7 entities of scouts that we use. He was not ranked by any of them. So that gives you an idea kind of where he is on most people's radars. But he was ranked 51st in NHL Essential Scouting among EU skaters. So he's clearly on the map, at least in European prospects world. Ross, I'm going to go ahead and say Miroslav Satan gets drafted 111th overall. That's my prediction.
I like that. Just right exactly where his old man got drafted.
Yeah, history repeats itself.
Once again. Now, our old friend Tony Ferrari had a little write-up on him as he went into the World Under-18 Championships. He ultimately had 4 points in 7 games. They're all assists, but mentioning that he skates well for his size, but seeing him against the best players in his age group is a whole other level than what he's used to playing in the Slovak U20. So, it's all about which team's going to fall in love with a 6'7" forward with some scoring touch. I mean, that's what's going to come down to for Satan Jr. This is an organizational depth type piece, at least at the beginning. But as we've seen time and time again, there is something to be said, and Ottawa fans would know best with the bloodlines and having a guy whose father's been able or is able to kind of help guide the son off the ice as much as on the ice about what the life as a pro hockey player is like. So I think at the very least, you're going to get a decent AHL player out of this guy. And I just feel like, why would the Buffalo Sabres, who have such a stacked prospect pool, why would they not just take a swing on having like a legend of the organization's son in the mix?
Yeah, it would be great. Although, Ross, as I was trying to find highlights for Satan Jr., obviously Satan Sr.'s highlights kept coming up. And one of his biggest goals ever was in his final season in the NHL with the Boston Bruins, double overtime playoff goal up against the Buffalo Sabres. That was when the Sabres had that yellow slug as their jersey. So that I thought that was kind of ironic. And the thing too, Ross, with scouting players that their dads are NHL players is, and you mentioned it, the off-ice stuff, but it's them having that mindset of being a hockey player is my plan A for a career. You know, like that's all they've seen. Like they're watching their dad. Like that's what they do. Like I feel like a lot of these players, they don't even have ideas of anything else they want to do. They're like, no, I'm going to be a hockey player like my dad. Okay, what are you going to, if that doesn't work out, what are you going to do? No, I'm going to be a hockey player. Like they're so focused on their goal. Mind. Yeah, they're on track. They don't have any other kind of career distractions getting in their way. And they're able to have advice from someone that's lived through it. So I think there's a lot to be said about this next wave of generations that are sons of hockey dads.
He plays center. He's tied for the tallest player skater in the draft. There's a couple goalies who may be around there, but him and Anton Silyev, the big Russian defenseman, are the only 6'7" skaters in the draft. So you're getting kind of a unicorn from that sense. And again, none of our 7 entities ranked him. So we've got an NA there. He's the only player in our rankings that has a not available average rank among our scouts, but he's still coming in at number 80 on our draft rankings. Any final thoughts on Miroslav Satan Jr.? Do you want to take a stab at what team will take a swing? Because I've got Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo's definitely a good option. I mean, his dad was originally drafted by the Oilers, I believe. So
yes, he was.
So maybe the Oilers take a look here, Ross. I put in my notes a team with some Slovak ties would go for him, or that have heavy scouting in that area would go for him. And I'm going to keep this going, Ross. I think it's a good exercise here. For each prospect, I have a 5-star rating. If I think the Sens should take a look at him. For Satan Jr., I gave 3 out of 5 stars. So that's like an average. I think they should be interested. Shouldn't go too hard. Shouldn't fully count them off, but right there in the middle.
And they've also got 3, if not 4, fourth-round picks, depending on what happens with Florida in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So you can take a big in height swing if you want with Miroslav Satan Jr., who comes in at number 80 on our 2024 NHL Draft rankings. All right, coming in at number 79, we're going over to the Swiss League where we discuss the season that was and the potential that is in Daniil Ustinkov. And this is a defenseman who's 6 feet tall, but big, like rangy, big. And what the thing is with Ustinkov is that this season didn't take the step forward that you would have liked. Like in Scott Wheeler's preseason top 32, Ustinkov was 27th. Well, in his most recent ranking, he's 55th. So he's going the wrong way. And a big part of that is that he's playing at such a high level in terms of he's been playing he played in the U20 league when he was 15. And then he started playing pro when he was 17. Like this to me is a guy who's always played above his age group. And I think that might be holding him back a bit on the offensive side of the puck.
Yep, I would agree with that, Ross. But in turn, when you're being held back on the offensive side of your game, but you're still a young player playing in the pros, you're probably being boosted by your defensive game. And that seems to be the book on Ustinkov here is that he's a defensive defenseman that's able to skate really well. And I found a lot of scouts, Ross, were very impressed with his ability to transition the puck up the ice and carry that puck up the ice by himself and break into the offensive zone and get the play started there. So as a young player playing D in a pro league, he's going to get a lot of that experience. And I think this is a guy that NHL scouts are going to look at as already having some pro attributes.
Left shot defenseman Ustinkov is a late birthday, August birthday. We know the calendar flips September 15th. So you've got more runway with him. And that's why Scott Wheeler has him at 55, mentioning that, look, there's a lot to like, an amazing forward skater, but a bunch of things I was reading on him, like the backward skating, he tries to avoid it because he knows that he's going to get beat wide if he's skating backwards. So as a defenseman, I'm going to go out there and say it's important to skate backwards. I know that's bold, but I think it's a pretty important attribute. So that's something that Ustinkov really needs to work on. Wheeler has him at 55. Elite Prospects has him at 86. And Bob McKenzie had him as an honorable mention below his top 80 prospects in his NHL ranking. So he's on people's radars. He comes in with an average rank of 70.5 for us. But to me, this is screaming Eric Brandstrom. I mean, like just, like a defensive defenseman without size. And the Senators they've been down this road. I'm not very interested in the Sens to draft him, especially being a left shot defenseman. Like, would you take him before Jorian Donovan, Thomas Shamara, Philip Nordberg? Maybe, but like they already have depth in that position. I just feel like he's not enough of a blue chip prospect to put him easily ahead of all the left shot defensemen that the Senators have in their system right now.
I don't know if I would agree that he's like an Eric Brandstrom though, Ross, because Brandy was putting up points when he was in the SHL.
No, I mean like the way that he's playing now.
Oh, okay.
Where it's like you're undersized, but you're on the penalty kill. You're not often on the power play. Like that's what I meant by that.
I think I'm a little warmer on him than you are. Like Ross, this is a guy. He's one of the younger players in the draft. You mentioned that, so a long.
I do
road.
like that.
But that's the thing. Like for a player as young as him to already have as much pro experience as him, like I think he's just going to get better and better. And this is a guy that's been in the Swiss system since 2017. Funny enough, he's Switzerland-Russia dual citizenship. So that's an interesting little wrinkle for him there. And he's a guy that I really feel he's got a low ceiling, like the potential, like you mentioned, probably not going to break through the roof, but a high floor. You know what you're getting. I think this is a really safe pick in the mid-third round, in my opinion. Now, the Senators don't have a third-round draft pick right now, so probably not in the range for them. I certainly would not reach on this guy and use a early second rounder on him. So as far as the Sens drafting him go, probably not very likely, but I gave this guy 3.5 stars. Like if they find a way to trade down or acquire a third round pick, wouldn't be the worst thing if they take a flyer on a safe left shot defenseman that already has pro experience and a lot of room to grow, that's been touted as a good skater and a good puck handler. Those are nice tools to have.
Scott Wheeler says he's got decent underlying results against men. Also thinks that his game's going to fit in better with the North American ice. So not sure if it's going to happen, but guess who? The London Knights have his CHL rights. So
interesting.
That could change things, obviously, with their development system and the way they pump out players, defensemen, forwards, you name it. The London Knights are the class of major junior hockey to produce NHLers. So that would be an interesting move for him. But I think around here would be where I'm comfortable with drafting him. If they went any higher than about 75, I'd probably kind of squint and say, are we sure here? But again, just takes one team to like the upside that Ustinkov has. And we could see it as a left shot defenseman, a guy who brings it at both ends, but you probably want a little bit more in terms of defending off the rush. And hopefully that comes as he's better with skating. Daniil Ustinkov comes in at number 79 on our NHL draft rankings here on Locked On Senators. Coming in at number 78 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, we are going to Sweden, and we are going with Simon Zether, a 6'3" centerman who played mostly in the SHL, but got into that European, what do you want to even call it? Like the multiplex, where it's like you're great against your own age group, but you barely play at the SHL level. It's such a catch-22 because it's great to be challenged like that and playing against the top players. But then there's games where he plays 2 seconds. There's games where he doesn't even step on the ice. And how are you supposed to evaluate a guy who barely plays?
And Ross, this is a particularly peculiar situation for Simon Zether here, because normally when we're talking about these guys over in Europe that are getting pro experience, but not really getting the full taste of it, but dominate at their own age level, usually they just get a handful of pro games. This guy played 42 games in the SHL and played 15 playoff games. So where is he? Like, is he too good for U20, or is he not good enough for the SHL? And you mentioned it. There's one game where he played 2 seconds, but then there's a range where he plays 16 and a half minutes. Like, it's crazy what's going on with this guy. And I wasn't able to find a whole lot on him. So a lot of it was just based off quick clips, little blurb articles that I found. But for a guy like him to dominate in his own age group, he was the captain of his U20 team, and he had 27 points in 18 games, only 4 assists in 42 SHL games. I have a very hard time getting a read on this player.
Me too. We should ask our guy, Oscar Pettersson, about him this summer. They played together with Rogla in the SHL and in the J20 system. Simon Zether, against his own age group, has just been dominant over the course of the last couple of years. He's got 68 points in 74 games during 3 years there, but the first one he had 3 points in 19 games. So since then, over a point per game, well over a point per game this past season. It's all about, for me and him, his hands. Like, to be 6'3", right shot centerman, by the way, and be able to pull off the dangles that I got to see on that highlight reel where he's playing against his own age group. It's a lot to like. I think the team's going to fall in love with that a little bit. Now, he is one of the oldest players in the draft. He's an October 2005 birthday. So it's what is he going to do to make his ceiling even higher? Like, what's the next step for him? Because if he's already kind of figured out his own age group, now's the hard part. Now is getting yourself into that same dominant position against the older group, or you're going to have to start being a bit more pliable with your style, and you're going to probably turn into a shutdown center with that size, that range, and a good skater. But he's got some moves in his bag of tricks that I think would be a shame not to pull off more and more. So he's a player I'm actually really interested in, and he just brings a lot of things that I like. Obviously, he's got the leadership as well. Scott, they're very high on him at 38 overall in his most recent rankings. Bob McKenzie has him at 76 and Elite Prospects at 83. So that's a average of 65.7.
Yeah, Ross, I feel like for Zether, similar thing as Ustinkov, right? If you have scouts or a scouting team or a team that's tied to that country, you're probably going to be dialed in on this guy more than other people. And our buddy Spoke Z, I saw a podcast where he was mentioning he thought it was crazy that other people aren't aware of what this guy is doing. And he even seemed to think that it wouldn't be that crazy if this guy went in the early second round. So it's someone that I think it depends on what you're looking for in a prospect that will determine whether you pick this guy or not. Ross, since I wasn't able to find a whole lot on this guy, I'm not really decided one way or another about him. So I gave him 3 out of 5 stars. I think there's potential here, but I'm not sure this is a guy that I want the Ottawa Senators taking a swing on, especially when we're looking at their second round pick. As we move up this draft prospect rankings, I think we're going to find guys that we like more in that position than Zether.
That's fair. Zether, just to put it in perspective, he had just the 4 points with the SHL team in 42 games. Oscar Pettersson this year with that same team only had 1 assist in 26 games. So that kind of puts in perspective a little bit that he was able to produce a little bit of offense, got his first SHL goal in that playoff run, 15 games. So Simon Zether comes in at number 78 on our NHL draft rankings. All right, Pillsy, we're going to have plenty more time for our draft rankings. Do you have any final thoughts on today's show?
Yes, final thoughts for me is, Ross, you love seeing the Florida Panthers up 3-1 on the Boston Bruins. We talked about it. There's double implications on that series. We want Florida to go far. Actually, we want them to go all the way, win the Stanley Cup.
Either all the way or no more.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But Ross, the no more argument, we don't really like that because we want them to bounce the Boston Bruins. So that Bruins draft pick, first rounder that the Ottawa Senators have from the DeBrincat trade, is elevated and they get that pick earlier in the first round. So only 1 game away from that situation working out perfectly for Sens fans.
Yes, it is. And with that, Boston would be eliminated too. And I think this might be it. I know they've got a great goaltender, but Marchand getting older. I'm thinking that Ottawa might be eyeing Boston next year. And I know that's a lot to say, a team that was unreal 2 years ago, still pretty good this year, but they've been carried this series by Swayman. It would be over in a sweep if it wasn't for Swayman.
But that's an interesting point, Ross, because now they have a great trade chip in Ullmark. They 100% are trading him in the offseason. Have to. You have a veteran, yeah, but a Vezina Trophy winning goalie that you're going to trade with 1 year left on his deal. I think they're going to get a lot of assets back, and they're going to be able to do one quick mini reload. And I think they're going to get another year or 2 of a push here. But it is interesting to see the decline of a Boston dynasty.
Hell yeah. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. I do. I really do. I'm the guy at the Boston Bruins funeral, just there to make sure that they get buried, because it's time. It's time for a power shift in the Atlantic Division, and I don't think the Florida Panthers are going anywhere. Toronto, maybe. We'll see what they do with their coaching hire, and I think just for Ottawa, and we talked about this at the start of the show, they've just got to take the mindset that this offseason is on the players individually to show up in their best shape and go from there, because, man, a slow start would just kill any momentum that is being built. So lots to look forward to, not only with the draft, but with the roster reconstruction. Steve Staios has his guy as a head coach, Travis Green. Now, how is he going to mold the roster to fit so this team can take another step forward this season? We'll be covering that as things develop. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. We say goodbye for today. Hope you enjoyed the start of our draft coverage. We'll be continuing to ramp that up. The more information that's available on players, the more we will discuss each one. But let us know in the comments who you think out of the 3 profiles we did today, who would fit best with the Ottawa Senators. That's all for us. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.